I had this arbitrary goal that I set when I was 15 years old. I wanted to be a millionaire. I didn't even know I was going to be a dentist yet, but I read this book called Think and Grow Rich, found it in my dad's study, read it all the way through. It was the first book I ever read. Now, Napoleon Hill, if you look him up, some people think he's a shyster. It was a really, really great book for me at the time. It made a huge influence on me. It sent me on a path of being obsessed with entrepreneurship and personal finance and personal development. So at 15 years old, when I read it, I decided I need to set some short and long-term goals. So I set a 20-year goal. I said, by the time I'm 35 years old, I'm going to be a millionaire. And young, naive 15-year-old Mark said, millionaire was $1 million in the bank, and I'm going to be netting $1 million. I didn't even know what net meant, but I was going to be making $1 million per year. All right, so this stuck in my subconscious. In my mind, I stuck with this naive, arbitrary goal that I set when I was 15 years old. Millionaire by 35, millionaire by 35. Decided I wanted to be a dentist. Thought the quickest way to get there was to build these multiple practices, started building multiple practices. 7 years into my career, I'm now 38 years old, so I missed the goal by 3 years. My CPA calls me, says, hey, I need you to sign your tax return. It's due by midnight tonight. Go ahead and do that for me. So I open up my laptop, I look at the top line, and there it was. I already had 7 figures in the bank, but there it was. I, for the first time, had netted 7 figures. It was like $1,034,000 or something like that. I remember distinctly, I shut the laptop, and I just stared off into space because I realized at that moment that I set this goal and I achieved it 3 years late, but I achieved it, and I realized that I'd never been more miserable in my whole life. I was freaking miserable. All right, it was at that time we created this matrix called the 4 futures. Mind, meaning, muscle, and money. Mind, what is your internal dialogue? What are you saying to yourself, about yourself on a regular basis? How able are you to handle the stresses of the day? You guys ever had just a bad day where like you drop your brush on the ground and you yell at the brush? Or I know it happens here in New York. Some of you guys don't even drive, but you're driving and you have a road rage moment. It's like, it's not the coffee's fault that it spilled on my lap. It's my fault. How able are you to handle stress? How able are you to know when you are a little bit overwhelmed or you need to slow down and refocus in a certain area? This is what I would call the mindfulness quadrant. And at that time, even though I just achieved my financial goal, I would give myself a 0 out of 10. I was constantly beating myself up. You're such an idiot. I can't believe you did this again. 0 out of 10 in the mindfulness quadrant. Meaning I would call that personal relationships. I would call that professional relationships. I would call that friendships. At the time, I had 3 little boys in private school. My wife was basically a single mom. I was traveling a lot. I was gone working 80-hour weeks, and when I was home, I was a jerk because I was thinking about work and I was exhausted. When I was at work, I was a boss hole. I wasn't nice to anybody, and they didn't like to be around me. I had about 100 employees at the time, and turns out that none of them liked me. So I would call my meaning quadrant at the time a 0 out of 10. Muscle quadrant, I was a collegiate athlete, had always been in great shape. Just about getting to this spot in my life where I'm about to achieve this financial goal, I gave everything else up. I'm eating fast food just out of convenience. I'm drinking way too much just to fall asleep at night and to calm my nerves. I'm sleeping like crap. 0 out of 10 in the muscle quadrant. But hey, I had 2 brand new cars, huge custom house in a golf course community, 3 boys in private school. By all outward appearances, I was the picture, and 6 dental practices, I was the picture of success. Would you call me a successful person at this point? If this was you, would you call yourself a successful person? This doesn't mean anything if you don't have this. This is nothing. This is nothing. So when I started my dental practice consultancy 13 years ago, We were all about systemization, overhead and cash flow control, helping people to become millionaires. And what I realized was that, holy cow, I'm creating a bunch of mini Marks. I'm creating people that I was 7 years into my dental career, rich and miserable. So what I want to impart to you all as I leave today, 5 minutes late, I want to impart to you that as you start to become a more sophisticated business owner and find resources like the podcast or a coaching group, it doesn't have to be mine, or a supportive community, make sure that you have some sort of way to assess where you are in your other quadrants. This is you as a human being. Make sure that you're paying attention to your relationships and your internal dialogue and your levels of stress and your physical vessel, the fuel you're putting into your body, how much sleep you're getting, how much substance you're putting into your body. All those things are very, very important. And this does not matter at all without that.